one of the biggest challenges we've seen is the repercussions of the border closure to migrants. So, since March, so we're now months out. And when the border closed to asylum seekers, there were some people who had already been waiting months. So I know a family that they were just 5 families away from actually being processed when the border closed. And so then they just added another 6 months onto their wait. And so having people that have been here in Nogales waiting for protection in the US, many of them now closing in on a year. I've had a number of migrants comment to me in the past couple of weeks that they're celebrating a year of living in Nogales, and they never thought when they arrived at the border that they would be waiting that long.
It was warm, hospitable.
In February, Arizona 360 toured Kino Border Initiative's new shelter just ahead of its grand opening. It offers nearly 50 times the space as its old facility and includes dozens of beds. But Horan says the pandemic has prevented Kino Border Initiative from sheltering anyone overnight. She added that workers still offer other services like meals to go and legal aid, but that all happens outdoors now.
What sort of strain does this place on organizations like the Kino Border Initiative, where for so many years you've had a system that is not perfect, but it certainly supports people who are in need?
Yeah, so really this ministry was designed focusing on deportees and more recently asylum seekers, people in transit. So really humanitarian assistance that's designed to be short term. But now we're trying to figure out how can we support people to find work? How can we support people's mental and emotional needs when they're dealing with so much loss and so much uncertainty for an extended period of time, and especially for children. So I talked with a woman this morning from Venezuela who said, my children have lost 2 years of school now, and I don't know what to do. It's so hard on them, and they really want to learn, but I can't put them in school here because they're requiring documentation from Venezuela, and the schools in Venezuela are closed. I have no way of getting that documentation. So all of the issues just become more complex and more difficult the longer people are stranded.
Is it forcing people to do things like cross unauthorized or go into the hands or the system of a smuggler?
Yes, so we've seen a number of people, and actually just this morning, a number of families from Guatemala showed up with very young children who had tried to cross through the desert, because more and more people are seeing that the option to seek asylum in the US is being cut off. More and more there are obstacles put in. We're not seeing people, even people in vulnerable situations that, according to the original CDC order, should have a process to be able to go into the US. Those exceptions are not being honored. So including a family from Cuba, a pregnant woman with a high-risk pregnancy, they had tried at a port of entry and asked and presented all of the information about the danger they were fleeing and her medical situation, and were refused. And so they made the difficult choice to cross through the desert. And that was the only way that they could be taken into custody to begin their asylum process. And it's possible if they had not done that, that the baby might not have survived. So you do see people making those difficult decisions because more and more the reality is there aren't other options available that should be to honor their rights to seek asylum.
How much longer is something like the unprecedented situation you're witnessing, how much longer is it sustainable for?
That's hard to say. I think one thing that has been a blessing is many people recognize what folks are suffering here and have responded, individuals that contact us about sending donations. I think the hardest thing for us is not being able to have the pool of volunteers we counted on before. We had 200 people that would come regularly, whether it's monthly or weekly, to bring food or help serve the food or prep the food or sort donations. And so that has been really challenging as staff having to step in and take on a lot of that work.
Have you had immigrants who typically come to places like KBI who have contracted the virus?
We have. It's hard to say because it's really hard to access tests here in Mexico. It's very expensive. It costs about the equivalent of $150 if you don't have access to Mexican Social Security. But we have a number of families. There's one gentleman that I know who came every single day until a few weeks ago when his wife showed up and said that he was in the hospital. So, we've been praying for him, but he's been on oxygen, and it's really challenging because people, if they're in a different environment, if their bodies are already kind of worn or they're undernourished, then they're even more susceptible to something like that. So that is something that we've seen. And for the most part, it seems the migrants, have the good sense to stay home, and they might send someone else to get their food if they're not feeling well. But it is concerning, especially for folks who might not have access to medical care.
Tracy Horan, Associate Director of Education Advocacy for the Kino Border Initiative. Thank you for your insight.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.